Testing one, two, three. Looks like we're working fine today, legends. Welcome to Veloharmony's live session here where we're talking about how you basically cycle for weight loss. Happy New Year to everybody. This is a brand new year. And we're starting it off right. You know, this is when people make a lot of New Year's resolutions and so forth. Hope we got enough lighting here. It looks okay. Let's see, we got 3 people on here. I decided to do this as opposed to doing a standard video because we have a video on the channel that is actually very popular. Let me load that on the other screen. With people that it's actually one of our evergreen videos. It basically talks about how much daily cycling to lose weight. So I decided to do this live session where we're talking about how you actually cycle to lose weight. Because if you're just riding bikes around the neighborhood and barely moving your legs, you're not going to lose any weight. Yeah, you're going to enjoy being outside, but that's about it. Happy New Year. One that name is familiar. It's hard to pronounce. It's got a lot of consonants together. But what I was saying is that you have to start with Psycho. Happy New Year to you. You have to start with a bike that fits you. Why is that important? If the bike doesn't fit you and is not comfortable, you won't ride long enough or consistently enough to lose weight. Secondly, for example, if you have a bike that has those regular standard pedals with no toe clips or even clipless, you're not going to spin fast enough to get your aerobic system going. So there are certain little things you have to do. And a lot of people call it, like some people will refer to the cycles that we use, they call them fitness cycling or whatever. You can call it whatever you want, but you need to ride at an intensity that's enough to activate what we call your fat burning, metabolism, the part of your metabolism. So if you're just out around the neighborhood pedaling at 20, 30 RPM sightseeing, you're not going to burn any calories. You're better off just going for a walk. That's probably more effective than sitting on a bike and just rolling, because walking is a little more intense than just sitting on a bike and not really activating the zone you need to be in. That's the reason I'm holding this session. So don't just ride a bike thinking, oh, I'm on the bike and I'm going to lose weight. No, you've got to have your zones and you need to make sure that you're staying in there long enough. What we do when I cycle, when I come to a red light, when I'm trying to get out of town and I come to a traffic light, in our state and in a lot of states in the union, you can turn right on red with care. So when I come to an intersection, I know the light's going to be long. I just turn right, go down, and loop around. So I keep moving. Because once I get in the zone, I want to stay there. This is the reason you see us going where we go every weekend on the films. We go out so we can cycle for 10 kilometers before we come to an intersection. And that's why I talk about the route having a high exercise potential. So if you're downtown, you can do the same thing if, let's say, on the weekends when you don't have the work traffic and you're living in the city, time your riding with the lights. We used to do that in the Houston area. Time your lighting because the lights have a certain sequence to where you can keep moving. That's the key. So once you hit your zone, you want to stay there. Because once you get fairly fit, your heart rate drops as soon as you stop and you get out of your zone. So then you're not maximizing that little time that you have for cycling. So it's not just getting on the bike that will make you lose weight. It's the zones you stay in and the frequency, how often you cycle that will make a difference because you eat all the time. So you have to use your body, not just on the bike, but moving around or whatever. All of that adds up to help you stay fit. It's a lifestyle change, basically. So you eat your way into fitness. He says, Frizzling78, glad you remember me, King George Weir. Yeah, I'm not King George Weir. That's a different person. There's no reason. Like people say, like when you think about basketball, when Michael Jordan retired, another person came along and said, oh, you're the next Michael Jordan. And the person corrected the reporter and said, I'm the first me. I'm using that as an example. I don't like those kind of references. Everybody's unique. There's only one George Weir. I think he ran for president. Yeah. So I don't like those kind of references. It's flattering and everything, but I'm who I am. And that's the way you should be. There's no reason to try to. It puts a lot of pressure on a person when you say this is the next of somebody who did something unique or great. No, that's the first. That person got their own thing to do. That's the way it works. Psycho, good to see you on here. Dion Brown, Happy New Year's to you. It's a new year. This is a good time to kind of take stock of how you want your year to go, and you go ahead and plan accordingly. And you just plan, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. Make it plan as a guide, because you can plan and then life happens. And then you just kind of roll with it. You know, if you plan to do something on this day and because of circumstances on that day you can't do it, there's no point in you stressing about it. You just go on to the next day that you planned, whatever you plan to do, because something came up that you had to deal with. You don't fuss over it. You plan to do a 3-hour ride, you only got 30 minutes, get on the trainer, go around the neighborhood for 30 minutes, enjoy that 30 minutes. Don't fret over it. There was an article I read a long time ago where someone wrote and it said that a 45-minute ride, it's not as good as a 90-minute ride, but it's better than nothing. That's a good model to have. Enjoy what you have. Quit worrying about what you don't. And be thankful for that. That's the way you have to look at things. You know, so this is our short sleeve kit that we redesigned, our retro kit. I really like it. It's a new fabric. And I wore it the other day because, you know, down here it doesn't stay cold very long. I wore it with a base layer on a ride, and I was very pleased with how everything came out. The fit is really very neat. We removed the internet address that was on the other one, kept the design the same. And the vendor that we're using now is more reasonably priced. So it's on our channel. We actually designed some shorts, and we've got our own cycling caps in the same theme, but it's really a unique design coming. It's with the designer right now. They're going to put that together. And so we will be, as soon as it's done, we'll order some, and you will see us sporting it, because I really like this theme for the channel. This is the mural that you see at the beginning of all our videos on this side. That's what we use for that. And so this is going to be the staple jersey. We got some other pieces of kit that we designed with Rafa and other vendors, but these guys allow us to order as needed. We don't have to order in large quantities. So each person can have a custom jersey made for them. And so we've gotten a bunch of orders since we did the last with the long sleeve jersey. And so a lot of people, their orders were put in right away. So in about 4 to 6 weeks from the date they order, they get their stuff. So we don't have to wait to gather large orders anymore. I really like this vendor, and the quality is really good. You can see we got the sleeves longer than our original, and it looks really cool. We got the orange band here. And those of you who saw the long sleeve on the last video, it's got the same band on it. And then we use this same design on the shorts. I loaded the pictures on the channel because our shorts are not here yet. They designed the shorts after they did the jersey. So it's in transit. We should be getting it soon. So you'll see it on some videos because we'll be sporting that. And I just decided to have a place on the website for just the team kit, along with other stuff we're going to be rolling out. So it's been really good. I mean, the channel's really growing. So I'm trying to streamline things to where it doesn't tie up a lot of my time, you know. So it's really cool having these sessions for you guys, especially our channel members. We want to thank all of you for supporting the channel. We appreciate that. We get a lot of people saying, oh, we've learned a lot from the channel, and that's great, because that's really why we set it up. When I started cycling, I didn't have the resources that are available now, you know, with YouTube and everything. And so a lot of stuff you really didn't know. And so it's good to hear people that say, wow, you know, I've really improved my cycling due to your channel. Because information is power. When you know something, you're not intimidated by people who may try to steer you wrong. You know. So the weekend's coming up. It's Friday, January 1st. We will be riding tomorrow. Yesterday it rained all day, and the temperature fell because the front came in, because the day before it was warmer. So it went from warm air to cold air. Usually we get a little bit of rain, but it rained the entire day. And this morning it was like 2 or 3 Celsius in the morning. It's like 36, 37, something, probably 37 degrees Fahrenheit. It warmed up to like 10 Celsius or so in the 50s Fahrenheit. So very, very nice temperature, for our area. That's pretty normal. And I think we're going to have something similar. Let me see what it looks like tomorrow. But basically what I tried to do around here is, like I've talked about, our weather changes a lot. It starts out very cold, then it warms up. So you can't just dress for cold because we ride for so many hours that we're out there when the temperature goes up like 30 degrees Fahrenheit in a 6-hour ride. So we have to dress for later in the day as well. So tomorrow, the high is supposed to be 55 Fahrenheit, which is about 13 Celsius. But with all the rain we've had, it won't feel like 55 Fahrenheit. It's going to feel maybe like 40 Fahrenheit, which is more like 7, I believe, or even 4C. So because it's going to feel cold, we've got to dress warmer. And because it's going to stay below 18 Celsius, which is like 65, I will be wearing tights because it's going to stay cold the whole day. There would be no reason to shed that much. It's easier to dress for days like those because you can just wear what you need and not have to worry about, is it going to get too hot, So, but it's supposed to be sunny fairly well. So I don't think I'm going to be in. Yeah, it's supposed to be dry. So Sunday's going to be a lot warmer. It's going to be like 18, 19 Celsius. So because the weather changes that much, we've got to dress accordingly. So what's the significance of dressing accordingly? If you want to do something long for a long period of time in cold temperatures, you've got to dress the part, because if you don't, you won't be comfortable out there, and you're not comfortable out there, you start looking for reasons to shorten your ride and head back home. Well, we don't want to go out for just an hour. If I'm going to put on all that stuff, I need to at least do several hours. And Saturday is our day for at least 6 hours. So we dress to where we're outside and we're comfortable. Even if we have to repair a flat, we want to be comfortable. We don't depend on just the warmth from exercise to keep us going, So that's the thing. That's the way you have to dress. Otherwise, you will not be able to stay out there for several hours. This happens a lot. So the guys we ride with, you see we start out with a bunch of people and then people start turning around for different reasons. But that's one of the reasons. You're not comfortable, you're not going to be out there very long. So anyway, for those of you who are a lot of people, this video that I was talking about losing weight, there is no quick fix. We gain weight over time, you're going to lose weight over time. You just have to look at what have you changed that caused you to gain weight, and sometimes they're not major changes. It's just a matter of your activity level going back. Burn Peter, Happy New Year to you, my brother. Welcome. So you have to make the necessary changes. Oftentimes, a lot of people on the early part of the year will get gym memberships and other things and then they go for a little while and then they stop. And the reason is that they have not made the lifestyle changes that they need to. Because sometimes it's not always practical to go to a gym. So you want to do things that will fit in your lifestyle. If you love cycling, you incorporate it in your lifestyle. That's what I mean when I say we make an appointment with our bike. So you can do it consistently. I mean, don't go ride a bike if you have something important to do in your life that will affect your life, other tasks or chores. Don't neglect that just because you love cycling. You have to plan when it's time to cycle and when it's time to do other stuff. Besides your work, there are other things. That way you have a balanced life. When it's balanced, you'll be able to keep it up. Soker Alex, Happy New Year's. I really enjoy your video. Thanks for all your advice. You're welcome, Soker. I'm glad you found the channel. We had on the last group ride, a guy named Samuel, I believe. Everybody comes on the rides and they look at the film and they think that seeing you on film, they can gauge how your fit is or whatever. And that's not possible. The cameras that we use, the wide angle lens, I think some of you know what they call the fishbowl effect, depending on how close you are to the camera or depending on the angle. Even if I'm riding with you and I look at you, there is no definitive way of knowing just by looking at you whether your fit is off or not. I have to see other things. That's what we talk about when I used to talk about people rocking on the bike and all of that. You have to take all of that in context. So you have to see enough. Because we got a lot of people saying, oh, they would tell me, oh, your saddle doesn't have enough sticking up, like on the Colnago. You don't have enough seat posts sticking up. You don't have, okay, yeah, well, how much seat post should I have sticking up? That's the touchy question, you know. So you have to be careful where you get your advice. There are a lot of channels on YouTube. Everybody got different ways of approaching things or whatever. You have to focus on the people who give you tools, meaning they're not just saying something, but they're actually showing you. That's what's more important. Don't just tell me about something, you know. There's a comment here. I hate to bring politics into it, but it relates to what I'm saying. There was a ride we did where we wore the U.S. flag on our, you know, I think it was election week in November. And then somebody came to the channel and said, you're trumping it. Well, that kind of bugged me, because to assume that the U.S. flag is related to Donald Trump is kind of rude when you think about it. I mean, who the hell is Donald Trump? The U.S. flag is the U.S. flag. We refer to the flag as the Old Glory. People died for that flag. You know, you guys heard about the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. I mean, so to come in and say, you're trumping it. So I made it clear in my reply. That was the reason I didn't just delete the comment. I chose to reply. I said, this is the U.S. flag. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump, something like that. And then another guy in Canada says, oh, he believed that Trump was an embarrassment to the U.S. I mean, people are entitled to their opinion. So I didn't really care. I moved on from that. But then after several weeks, this is just last week, some pro-Trump guy came and posted a comment, said that, and I'm going to paraphrase, I don't remember exactly, it just made me laugh. He said that Donald Trump had done more for America than anybody else. The comment itself was hilarious because he sounded just like Donald Trump himself. Just say whatever with no facts, no support. You know, I don't know, those of you who remember, I was personally embarrassed because I've always believed that the president of the U.S. represents all of us. I don't really care. When you're the president, we all get behind you. So when he went to the UN, he was giving a speech at the United Nations. Where I grew up, that's a big deal. The United Nations is the whole world. We have representatives from the whole world sitting at the UN in New York. And our president was laughed at when he said that his administration had done more than any administration in the 200-year-plus history of the United States. The foreign delegates laughed at our U.S. president. It really bugged me. And it bugged me not because I'm a flag-waving Trump supporter, but it bugged me because he is the president of the United States. It really bothered me. And I'm like, who the hell are his advisors? You can't just make statements that you can support. They laughed at him, and he had the nerve to say, oh, I didn't expect that response. And I was like, you're kidding me? So, you know, I had to change the channel because it was like, man, because he is the U.S. president. Until the 20th, when the new one is sworn in, that's our president. That's what these guys don't understand. They say, oh, we're pro-Trump supporter, like there are two different United States. The president of the United States is the president for all of us. He seems to forget that. That's our president. I don't care whether you support his views or whatever. And so everything he does affects us. And it really annoys me when people I left a comment there because this is somebody who's going to have to educate themselves. It's not my problem. But it's kind of like, wow, you know, whoever gets there represents us, and we got to stand behind that person. And we got to hold that person accountable for whatever they say or do, which his followers don't do. I can tell you, oh, the sun is shining and it's raining like crazy, and you're supposed to believe that, and that's okay. You know, it's the guy who said, don't believe what you see or hear. So I don't understand that. So I did not respond to that comment. I let it stay there because the thing is that I'm not trying to mute anybody on the channel, but the thing was for him not to realize why I even responded to the original comment just told me that this person has a lot of self-educating that needs to be done. But it's like, you know, because you carry the U.S. flag does not make you a Trump supporter. Like I said in there, I'm a supporter of the Republic. A lot of people in this country don't realize I've grown up in places where we did not have a democracy. It's not a lot of fun. And they're taking it for granted here. And I'm sure a lot of you all over the world have lived or know of places where people are circumventing democracy. It's not a lot of fun. So I take a lot of solace in the fact that we at least have a democracy here that we're trying to make work, that we don't kill it, So I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I wanted to just mention that it's important that we look forward to the new year and hopefully get more stable and consistent representation in our our national federal government, because there's just been too much chaos. We need more leadership per se. That's what we're looking at down here in Texas, where one of the leaders, unfortunately, kind of a negative thing in the COVID. We have a lot of high COVID cases. This week, for the first time, my phone had what they call the emergency alert went off on my phone. My wife was asking me if I got it. We don't usually get to that much. They were basically letting everybody in the Harris County, our biggest county in the Houston area, know that COVID cases were out of control and people needed to be aware to social distance and all of that, because believe it or not, people are still not treating this as seriously as they should. And Texas, California, New York, New Jersey, a handful of other states were up there in the numbers. And, our guys in the LA County area, their hospitals are overwhelmed. And what people need to understand, if the hospitals get full, if you go out and hurt yourself hunting or working in your yard or whatever, and there's no bed, that's a problem, because they won't be able to take care of you. It's not just about COVID-19, but COVID-19 is filling up the hospitals. Our nurses and doctors are getting stressed from not getting time off. They're working multiple shifts. These are human beings. They need to rest for the quality of care to stay up there. So we got a lot of issues that need to be addressed. So the vaccine's out, but it's not a cure. And people need to understand that. And that's the kind of stuff that I keep up with, because I'm a very active person and I'm out there all the time. If I get injured for whatever reason, if I'm riding my bike and I get injured, I want to make sure that I'll be able to get medical care. You guys heard about our buddy Paul H., who got hit by a car, guy turning in front of him. Well, the hospitals are so full that they couldn't keep him. So he has been to the hospital several times because they missed stuff. Now, I don't know if it's because of COVID or because of the quality of the doctor, because there were, when you're in an accident, it's supposed to x-ray your whole body, whatever. But every other day he was finding other little issues. He found that his wrist had a fracture the day after they released him. So he's been back to the hospital several times, as opposed to having all his issues dealt with at once. And I believe that they're not keeping him because they don't have the beds. So they're sending him home, and then the next day he has more issues, then he's got to go back. So it's almost like an outpatient thing. So it affects all of us, whether you have COVID or not. We can't fill up our hospitals and expect to function well. If you have a heart attack or whatever, what are they going to do? So it's really a serious thing that we all have to be aware of, and try to keep ourselves distanced so we don't load up the system, the hospital system. Let's see here. David Papp said the U.S. flag is for the USA. Exactly. That was why I even got into that, David. I just don't. I don't drive with a flag on my car, or Paul doesn't drive with it on his truck. But I think what has happened is most of the supporters of our current president drive around with his name on a flag, just a regular flag. Then they have our U.S. flag on the other side. And that is becoming like, when you see the U.S. flag, you're supposed to assume that you support Trump. And I think that's kind of ridiculous. So yes, the U.S. flag is for the USA. And regardless of who is there, we have to support that person that we put there. I don't have anything personal against one person or another, but you're going to take a job, do the job. Don't fight for a job you can't or won't do. That's my attitude. He's fighting for a job. We fired him. He's been fired. He'd like to say you're fired. Well, we said you're fired. Get the next guy in there. Let's see what he does. I think all of them should be fired. They all go over there and get rich and get out. That job used to be a temporary thing. It was a part-time thing, the whole Washington thing. They used to go there just part-time and then go back home. Now they go there to become millionaires because of all the lobbying and all the stuff they're connected to. So it's just about getting money. You know, we've got a deficit. All of a sudden now they're concerned about it because they don't want to help our own Americans that are struggling. So now they're concerned about deficit. Well, if you're going to go into debt to help your people. We're the one who pay the debt anyway. So you might as well spot us to get us back on our feet, you know. So that's the thing. That's what I follow. It's like, what are they doing? You know, because when I vote, I don't just vote the whole ticket. I like to vote for people who are going to do the job. I don't care who whether they're independent, whatever. We need people who would, you know, right now people need money. We need to make sure people are not evicted because of the issues with COVID and the fact that we've been shutting down things. So you shut down stuff, you cripple businesses or small business or whatever. And then what are they supposed to do? Well, the problem is the landlords themselves got to pay bills, right? So the landlords got to pay their bills. You can't say, okay, no eviction. Well, how long does that last? Are you going to protect the landlords from their bankers or whoever they're paying their mortgages to for the properties they're renting? It's all of that. They need to address that and put a moratorium. And then when things settle, they say, okay, we're starting anew, and make sure that they're not piling up interest during the moratorium. I assume they're not, but we don't know. We don't get those details. We have a lot of businesses here that never reopened in our area. And from us cyclists, we see that because there are certain areas where they had little stores that we used to stop at. One of them named Ron's Grocery, and Ron hasn't opened yet since March. And he was located in a spot where, you know, you're out in the middle of nowhere. It was a good spot to stop and get your stuff. So we've been impacted by it. So those are the things we look at. All right, let's see here. Jamie says, hello there. Is it good cycling on cold weather to gain resistance? Cold weather doesn't give you resistance. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. Yeah, I'm not sure. What the best way I'm going to put it is this: you don't have to work hard to lose weight. I think that's what you're driving at there. You want to get in shape. Even Greg LeMond in his book said that spinning your way into fitness was the easiest way to get fit. If you guys remember, Indurain would like after he would win a tour, you know, the year ends, they go home, they don't have the same level of activity, you know, they back off, gotta let the body, the mind rest. Early in the season, the Indurain or Le Mans would not necessarily be winning Paris-Nice and all these races. People used to criticize Greg for that. But Greg would ride himself into shape, and by the time the tour would come around, he'd be ready. Same thing with Indurain. Indurain will ride the earlier races to get, and they're not the only guys. I'm just using that as an example. A lot of races, people go there and they have a different objective. The objective may be, I just want to get 250 kilometers in my legs today because that's the length of this race, sitting in the bunch and just spinning. Depending on your fitness level, that would be what you need. And so they don't win every race, you know. That's why Merckx and them were very unique, because they would win races throughout the year from early to later in the season, the tours and the classics and so forth. It's not that easy to do. So I think what you're driving at is resistance per se. What you need is knowing what your goal is. If you're trying to drop weight, don't ride zone 5. Because your zone 5, first of all, will not be very fast because you're out of shape if you're trying to get fit. Try to get yourself in shape. Plus, you will burn yourself out if you try to go super hard and you're out of shape. You won't be able to do it very long. Start with staying in your zones 1 to 2. That's why you need to know your zones, first of all, either by feel or by doing your threshold test, using your heart rate monitor. Even if you're using a power meter, they all have zones, okay? You have to know your zone so you train there depending on the time of the year. So it does not matter whether you have resistance or not. What matters is use the gears on your bike for the terrain you're in. So resistance will come from the grade of the road or the wind, not whether it's cold or hot. That's what you need to focus on. And use the gears accordingly, because the resistance will cause you to hit certain zones differently depending on your fitness level. When you're very fit, you got to go harder to get to zone 2. You see us riding a lot of times. I'm sitting in the group and I say I'm just in zone 1, and we're doing almost 39K depending on the terrain and the wind, because I've done the work to where my fitness level, but not everybody's in zone 1 at that time. That's what's important. John Hill, Happy New Year to you. Thank you, my brother. Welcome. We appreciate your support on the channel. So keep in mind that what is most important, we've talked about it here. Even Cycle says he likes to cycle by feel. Okay. I like to cycle by feel because feel to me is first, and then you can look at any gadgets you may have. That's the reason why there are a lot of rides. I don't have any gadgets. I just go. I just go on my bike. I have a watch or something to know how many hours I'm going to be out there. That's really the main thing I use on my Garmin is the time riding and the clock, time of day. Okay, because for the most part, I kind of know what zones I'm in by the way my breathing and my sensations. I think you need to learn that. Even if you get your zones that you right now you don't have feel quite down, try to look at, okay, my heart rate says I'm in zone 2. How do I feel? Is my breathing out of whack? Or am I comfortable? Can I have a conversation? Your conversational zones are usually 1 to 2. But when you're fit, you can be in zone 4 and have a conversation. You're just not going to be talking in complete sentences all the time, but when you're fit, you can really talk into the higher zones. You've probably been on rides where you're working really hard and you hear somebody talking in the back. And that can be annoying sometimes because you're like, man, I'm busting my chops here and this guy's chatting. That means, first of all, he's taking advantage of the drop. And second of all, that person's in good shape. I've been on rides where I was working hard, and you guys know Mo. Mo was singing. I'm in the group working hard, and Mo is singing. He was singing some Italian song. He does that a lot. And I just looked at him like, yeah, that's how fit he was on that day for that effort so he could sing. And that lets you know. That's the reason why I say when you go to the front, don't kill yourself. Because depending on who you're riding with, you better make sure you got something left so you can stay in there once you pull off the front. It's the same thing. So don't worry so much about the time of year and so forth and so on. Focus more on how hard you're working because whether you're outside or inside, you want to be in the right zone to burn fat if that's your goal, or you want to be in the right zone to push your body if you're supposed to be in zone 4. It's the mix of your training that will get you fit. That's what's most important if you want to lose weight on the bike. That's why I opened this session saying that if you're just riding around the neighborhood, you see people riding around the neighborhood, they're barely pedaling. That's not going to get them anything. They would have been better off just walking if they're trying to lose weight. If they're just out to be outside, that's fine. But when you're doing it to get in shape, you got to push it. You got to work. You got to get to that zone. That's why I talked about us not liking to stop at the red light. I'll go right, do a loop, come back. So I want to keep my heart rate up especially when I cycle solo. You guys saw that in that solo video I made. I turned right, then I ended up going on a completely different route. Because the goal is to keep moving. Moving time versus elapsed time. Those of you who are on Strava, it tracks that. It also tracks it in the Golden Cheetah software that I use. So you go out for 2 hours, and your moving time is 1 hour 56. Wow, that's a good use of your time. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean you need to run red lights and other things. That's why I said, because a lot of times the disparity between my moving time and my elapsed time is usually because of traffic lights and other stuff. So what we do is where the situation warrants. When I come to a light that's going to be very long and the traffic allows, I'll make a right turn, go do a U-turn, come back, then continue on that road. Just do a little loop just to keep my activity, my moving time up. But I'm not going to do that if it's unsafe per se. But the idea is that when you're out there, you want to keep moving. And that's another positive about indoor training. You don't have the interruption for traffic and other things. You can really get a better work. A 30-minute indoor workout is very good because you don't stop. There's no coasting that much. Some guy came on the channel today and put a comment. I replied to him. He said that I see you guys coasting, but when I stop coasting, my bike stops immediately. You all know that. A plethora of things can cause that. So all I told him was take your bike to a qualified mechanic and let them check it out. Because it could be the wheels rubbing on the brakes, bad bearings, who knows? So I didn't want to get into all of that. Yeah, you should be able to coast. That's part of the thing on your bike, especially in the group. Let's see. Your friend from Central Africa got into an accident. I didn't know. Hope he is doing better. My friend from Central Africa. Who is that? Oh, I think you're talking about the wrong Paul Frizzling. Not Paul. That's a Paul H. That's a different guy. It's Paul H. Paul Ilonga is my brother and friend. He didn't get into an accident. Paul Haberlin is the guy who rides on the channel. He also bought the team kit. He was hit by a car. They were riding and somebody turned left in front of him, but he's recovering. So that's the guy whose ride we went to make sure, just to encourage him to get well quickly and return to the peloton, the film we made last weekend. There's a different Paul. That's why we use the different designation. Paul I is the guy I ride with. Paul H is the one that had the accident. Rex Maverick says, great explanation. I explained Christopher Froome performing at the Giro. Yeah, the Giro was not an objective for Chris, you know, and especially if you've been out of racing, Rex. Rex says, great explanation, because I was talking about how the riders get in shape. Not everybody shows up at every race to necessarily make that an objective to win. They use races for training as well to prepare them for their goals of the season. Nowadays, especially, most riders pick certain races that they're more suited for, that they're aiming to win. But back in the day, with Merckx, Anquetil, and all these other guys, they just, like Merckx, that's why they call him the cannibal. Merckx wanted to win everything. There is a joke. I don't remember the rider's name, but there was a joke where they're interviewing this guy, and he says that he had won Paris-Brest. Paris is a long endurance race. You go from Paris-Brest back to Paris. He said, I've won Paris-Brest, Paris. He said, and Merckx has won everything else. So that's something, you know, and it actually is an interview of a cyclist, you know. So yeah, nowadays what the riders do is, depending on their goals for the season, they don't want to peak too early, because you can only handle, your body can handle only so many peaks comfortably. Because once you get in top condition, it's hard to stay there. So they try to peak close to their objective. Some of them make sure they come in a little under, but never overtrain for their objective. Until you'll hear them in a tour saying that they're riding themselves to be ready the second week or the third week. And it's never guaranteed, because it's hard to pin down. It's a science. And so sometimes they'll hit it right, sometimes they don't. So what they do is, the best thing they do is they try to replicate what worked in the past as much as possible. But you all know how it is from year to year. Things change, especially with 2020, them moving the timing of all those races. The Tour de France started later. The Tour of the Volta a España was even later. So it's hard. You know, it was hard to expect Sagan to be at his best later in the year when he's trained his body to be ready for July. You know, so all of those things are factors. That's why, you know, Fabio Aru had a problem. He had to pull out of the Tour. He didn't understand why he was not at his best. It affects you, just the change in time. That's why it's hard to win the Giro and the Tour. That's why you got guys like Pantani and Merckx and a few other riders that have done the Tour and the Giro double. It's hard to do, especially nowadays with the level of competition, because the body can only take so much. Your body needs to recover and absorb all of that. If you push it too hard, it will break down. And then you've seen riders where they're doing great in the Tour and they're fifth position, you know, in the Tour, and all of a sudden one stage they're off the back, and then they end up quitting the race. They can't figure out why, because it was like one stage too much for them, for their maturity at that time, you know. And you know, there's no way you can tell ahead of time. That's why a lot of times when riders will do a tour, like the guy from Pujacar, the guy who won the Tour. After he did that, I think he did the World Championship, and I think that was it. I don't think they had him race anything else. Because if you do too much when you're a young rider, it can be too much for your body. It can set you back, actually. So they have to be careful about that. It's very involved. You know, the human body it's just complex, and it's different from each rider to each rider based on their genetics, the talents they have, and their maturity. So Jamie says, I'm a racer at local contests, and I used to train on windy conditions and try to keep certain speed against the wind that has given me power when I need to sprint. It's kind of hard to train to speed. I tell people that all the time. So at best, Jamie, that was hit and miss. It'll give you power to sprint because your legs are stronger, but it won't give you speed. So if you sprint against somebody faster, they will pass you because they got snap. The wind does not give you snap. The wind prepares you for high force efforts like climbing. So if you want to be really fast, you got to be able to turn the gears fast. So if you're going to train in the wind, then you're going to have to use smaller gears. That's why you can't train against the wind for speed. Because what speed are you going to set when you downshift? So riders in the know don't train to speed. Speed is not a good metric for training. You're going to have to get something else. Let's see here. Uncle Paulie is Happy New Year. I'm a believer in periodizing my training. So am I. Especially for us who have racing goals. I see so many local guys who train the same hours year round, a big disservice. It's not the hours they train at, it's the intensity. That's what I talked about in our video. If you watch our group rides, I talk about that all the time. You'll see me sitting in and guys would make moves. I say, I'm just going to sit this one out or whatever. Because depending on even the last one I loaded last week, I think I made the comment, I didn't want to peak this time of the year. It's not the hours. If you have the hours, whenever there's a doubt, you have the time, it does not hurt to do more endurance. Because that's what really matters. So whenever there's a doubt and you have time, do more endurance. But don't try to do super hard intensity all the time, because that's the one that can lead to overtraining. You're not going to get stale by using a moderate gear for a long period of time. Usually we used to call it like a 75-inch gear as a gauge. And it depends on the terrain you live in. But riding comfortably at a conversational pace will get your body conditioned. You will build capillaries so that when you go fast, your fast will be very fast and will be sustainable. You're not going to be a flash in the pan. So you can do the same hours. Just don't, when we ride with those guys and we leave them, we're not riding at zone 5. We might come to a hill that will hit zone 3 or 4 or whatever, but most of the time it's zone 2, which is hard for most people. But what ends up happening, as I've explained in other videos, your zone 2 becomes someone else's zone 4 who has not been conditioning themselves. So those guys that you're talking about, if they know what they're doing and they're riding the same hours all year and they are staying within the proper zones and you don't, you will have trouble staying with them when the season kicks in. Because if they're still doing the hours, their zone 2 will be a wider range than yours. So when they really start going hard, you will have to just watch them go. That's the key. And it depends on the genetics, because one guy might need 6 hours a week, the next guy might need 12. You got to figure out what you need to get yourself ready for your event, because it varies. Don't just copy somebody's hours, because you may not need that many, or you may need more. Hey, Robert. Robert just got joined us. Welcome, Robert. Let's see here. So, Ivan, Happy New Year. Colin Edwards locked in from Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome. Yeah. I rode about maybe 500 miles overall. The Festive 500 kicked in. I was already riding a lot. So I took off 2 days to let my body absorb the training. And then I'm going to ride tomorrow with the group. So yeah, you have to know how to train. You have to know how many days. It's a science. You have to know how many days you need to rest to be at your best. You have to know when you need to take a break. All that's important. I didn't set 500 miles as a goal. The Festive 500 was 311 miles, and I was already into my normal routine, so I just ramped it up. And I did the Festive 500 in like 4 days. I was done. 4 rides, because I did just big rides. And so then by the time, let's see, Thursday got here, I was like, I don't really need to ride. Let me just go ahead and rest and let my body absorb the training, because most people need 24 to 48 hours of rest to really have fresh legs. Because if you're tired, you can't really drive your engine. That's the key. So it's a science. You got to get a program and then learn what you need. That's what coaches help people they coach find out. is what works for you. And once you get to know yourself, they're amazing. You get a high level of confidence when you're riding. So you're not wondering, you know what you need. So you have to pay attention to your sensations. And that's why most coaches, the first thing they make sure that you get a fit. How does your bike feel? Because you got to be able to do the work without having problems. You don't want knee problems or saddle sores and other things because you're riding a lot. Pelea's code says remove the speed metric. You don't have to remove the speed metric. It's there. It's nice to see, but I don't train to it. Somebody was distracting me from the power I needed to sustain. Also, in descent, I was more concentrated in the road rather than on my Garmin. Yeah, a lot of the pros that have like what they call the SRM head unit, they can't remove the power field. They rise, they go on, they'll put a piece of black vinyl tape over the power. They don't want to see it. They're not training the power that day. After a while, you get sick of that. I only put that power meter on the bike I'm riding with the group during the week. I don't use it. I don't need it. Fast is fast. I've told a story about my coach telling me I had a little cycle meter. They used to have those small cycle meters with 2 buttons on them. They're very simple back in the day. It just had speed and distance for the most part. And on a ride, the magnet must have moved or something, so it wasn't registering. And so I rolled up to the coach and said, hey, my speedometer is not working. He said, well, if you're going fast enough, you'll be at the front. Yeah, I was a bit annoyed, but it kind of got to me later. It doesn't really matter. You're at a race. What do you care what the speed is? If you want to win this race, you got to either be in the breakaway or off the front or with the top guys. So it doesn't matter what the speed says. But for us who's cycling, I like to track hours more than anything. I've said that before. Your body does not care how fast you go. It means nothing to your body because you can be going fast with the wind behind you, like you just said, down the hill. Doesn't matter. What matters is, as an engine, how hard is the body working and for how long? So if you can tolerate 20 minutes in zone 4, you know that or whatever, that's how you gauge, okay, then I need to do maybe 25 minutes in zone 4 the next time I'm training hard. The key is how long are you working in those zones? If you're doing a time trial, a 40-kilometer time trial, you need to be able to work hard for at least an hour, let's say, if you want to be competitive. I mean, I'm really pushing it for an hour. So you want to come in like 53, 54 minutes or something like that. You got to be able to work hard for an hour. So what does it matter what the speed is? What matters is how long am I staying in this zone? Because that's the zone I need to go. Because it doesn't matter what the speed says if all you can do is zone 4 or maybe zone 3. If that's all you can tolerate, whatever speed it translates to based on the conditions, you got to live with that. So you can't use speed. You got to focus on the zone. Because if you can go zone 4 or zone 5 for 30 minutes, you just go zone 4, go as hard as you can for 30 minutes and let the chips fall where they may, especially in an event. There are a lot of riders don't use speedometers. I think the guy last year who won the tour did not even have power meter or anything on his bike in that last time trial where he ended up taking the jersey from Primoz. He just went hard and he won the tour. And then they said he did not have any power meter or anything on it because it really wouldn't matter what the power meter said if you're going as hard as you can go. So it's a lot of marketing that gets this stuff out there. Yeah, the pros use it or whatever, but they really don't make it number one. Like I said, you see these guys that still got a heart rate monitor belt on them. They analyze after the fact. Now, some riders may say, oh, okay, it says I'm doing 500 watts. Let me try to stay there. I'm sure they do that. But that's not the primary thing. If they're feeling crappy, they listen to themselves. Because there's no point in blowing your engine because you want to do 500 watts. Kind of like driving your car. I want to do 100 miles an hour, but the needle's in the red zone on the temperature gauge. You got to stop or you'll blow the engine. It's the same thing. You can't ignore how you feel. So don't get hung up on that. If you don't have a power meter, you're fine. You don't need it to be successful. It's nice. It's a good training tool for specificity, but it's not required out of the gate necessarily to improve. Fast is fast. You're going hard, you're going hard. It doesn't matter who's got a power meter, who doesn't. I've had to pull out of races where my heart rate was 145 beats per minute. was low. I couldn't get it up. It wouldn't go up because I was tired or whatever was going on. So it doesn't matter, you know. All right, let's see here. Shahir, I'm sorry. NP versus average power, which metric you think is more useful? I think normalized power is probably, it's a smoother one. You know, it's okay. I think either would be fine. The average power is really good when you're doing your threshold tests, but for analyzing trends, you can use normalized power. Either one is fine. The power meter I have, the power pod, uses normalized power out of the gate. So I didn't have to select 3 seconds, 5 seconds on my Garmin. I just selected power because the manufacturer said they have it calculating normalized power, which is fine because power jumps all over the place anyway. It's too crazy for you to try to track. You know, if you watch the data values, they're all over. When you accelerate, it spikes, then it comes down. So either one will be fine. They're close. If you put them against each other, normalized power is a smoother line. You know, but they all have their uses. Leonard wants to know if I still watch all the major Grand Tours. Not necessarily all of them. I watched the Volta and the Tour. This year we really didn't have that much, but they come on the telly and they're on what do you call it, NBC SN or something like that on cable. So I record them and I watch them when I'm working on other things. I don't just sit there and watch them. And I like to record them because I like to speed through the commercials because they're very long. And I watch them kind of in the background while I'm doing other things. Happy New Year, Dwayne. Cisco 213. Man, I've tried to lose weight, eating right, and in August my stats were 575.4 miles, 47 hours, 46,800 feet, and nothing changed. Football linebacker build and nothing changed. Well, it sounds you may be riding too hard. That's a lot of climbing, 46,000 feet. It depends on what kind of riding you do. I talked about that earlier. If you want to drop weight, now you can only drop weight within reason. I mean, if you're just, I mean, the way you're made up is the way you're made up. Unless you're carrying excess, your body will only lose what you have to lose. But I think that you may be riding hard, but not in the right zones. That's what I believe. This is what I've talked about. You need to be in your fat burning zone. You may be burning carbohydrates as opposed to the fats that your body carry, that we all carry, that we store. And then it has to do with the volume. I mean, 574 miles for the whole month. I don't know your activity level or any kind of other stats on you, so I can't really say. But I think that you may need to focus more on the aerobic zone and high cadence riding. Because we carry a lot of food on our rides and we go all through it. We eat that. My weight right now stays about the same. I don't lose much, you know, right now. I'm not trying to lose weight. My weight just goes down when my activity level increases. So Shahir said, what would be an endurance ride on an indoor trainer? The weather has been tough. I work daytime. I've noticed more than 90 minutes in a trainer gets really boring. You need a plan. You don't have a plan. You don't have a workout. That's why it's boring. If you have a workout where you got a scheduled warm up and then you've got the activity mapped out, you have your zones, then you wouldn't be bored. But you're just riding to be riding. That's why 90 minutes is boring. But it would go a lot faster if you actually had a plan. You can look at. We've got some plans on here that you can look at and see if. Because when you train without a plan, you're just riding. That's the biggest thing with that. If you go to veloharmony.com, the website, and just try to look at in the shop and the fitness area, we've got plans where you can train by yourself or you can get a custom plan made for you. See which one will work for you. And that may be a good place to start because that's what makes the difference. Because when I get on the trainer, even my warm-up is not boring because we have specific warm-ups for the kind of workout you're going to do. I think that's what you need to look into. Jamie wants to know, what training would you recommend for a criterium cyclist? Long rides of 100K or short rides? In my case, I do both, but I want to know your insight. It depends on the length of your criterium. Just because you say it's a criterium cyclist, how long is the event? 45 minutes, 1 hour? Do it by time. The events, the criterions are time, mostly. But then you have to focus on what's your weakness. Because for a criterium cyclist, you need to have speed and power. Okay? But you still need a bit of endurance. You don't need a road racer's endurance. That's baggage. Because your races are not that long. They're probably 90 minutes or less, if that. And so you need intense workouts. You need to figure out your zones, and you need specific workouts for criterium. So the same thing I was telling him, let me get the link and put it here. Look at the plans that we have out there, because we have some individual workouts for just leg speed workout. As a criterium guy, that's what you need. You need to be able to snap to 150 RPMs if you need to close that gap, then shift up and keep it going. And the reason why you would do that is you don't want to close the gap and have blown legs. But you don't want to spin at 150 and be out of gas because you have not conditioned your body to do that. So in a crit, you need to be able to do 20 plus interval reps of high intensity, high speed stuff. So your body conditions itself to do that, because most of your event, that's what it's about. Every corner, you got to have a jump out of there. So let's see here. So go to veloharmony.com, look under the shop menu, and look at the fitness programs. There are workouts, individual workouts in there for specific workouts, the DIY plans and whatever, and they have workouts in there for leg speed and different things. That's what you need as a criterion person. If that's your main event, you don't need to ride more than the time of that event. And your events are like 45 minutes to maybe 90 minutes at most, if that. Leonard Pearson. So what does your riding or training consist of now that you have retired from the sport? And I have not retired from the sport. I retired from getting in my car and traveling all over the place to do races. We do cyclist sportive events now, like Grand Fondos and stuff. When they're in our area, I'm not going to drive 3 hours to do a 1 hour event. That's just not practical. And that was the drag with when we competed. You drive all over the place to do a short event. You're in and out of hotels. It sucks. That's what the pros go through. You see them in these buses. They're away from home most of the year. So it's not very exciting. Those guys, they keep riding their bikes when they're done traveling on the road. But, I love riding my bike. That's why I got into it. So, yeah, I think I know what you mean. Basically what you mean, I'm not doing the road races per se. I train the same way. That's why I built those plans and put on the website. I use those plans. So I follow the same pattern through the week. And then weekends on Saturday, we film with those guys, and then we leave them and go. Because even when I was competing, we rode long. Because you need to do more than you event. Road racing requires a lot of endurance. Unlike criterion that requires a lot of speed. But as a road racer, you need to be part crit rider and just a long distance rider as well. You need to be able to do both. You should be able to have the snap to close a gap and so forth, like he was asking about. So road racers can basically do it all. So when they do road races and they go and do the local, like in Belgium, they call them kermis, I think. They do the local stuff that's just for variety. So you can do both. Because you don't want to do too much endurance and neglect your speed. So during the week, on Tuesday, I do speed and power work. Then on Thursday, I do some hill work. That's my main thing. Now, Wednesday, I will ride, but that's not a day where I'm focused on any one thing. It's just to go out, spin, and keep myself loose. And then Friday, if I feel like it, I might do a short sprint or run around, do errands, so I don't have to do anything on Saturday. Which is the day I ride long. So so the cycle is the same, because it's more important to train in the different systems. So the training that I do stays the same. I cycle at least 4 days a week, sometimes 5 or more, but generally 4 days. So Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then sometimes Wednesday and Friday I may do. So anywhere between 4 to 6 days a week I cycle. So it doesn't really change for me much because I just love riding my bike. I like going fast when I need to. That's why in the group ride, if the guys are playing and I'm feeling good, I just go ahead and go. Last week's ride, when Mike wanted to stop to change his clothes, I was ready to continue to ride on 2854. You guys, those of you who watched the film, I looked back and Mark knew that I don't like to stop. So when I looked back and I saw them kind of coasting, that's why I looked back, and then he called out to me to wait because Mike needed to take off because he was overheating. He was overheating because he wore the wrong kind of garments. He had 4 layers, but he did not have breathable layers. So he got hot and wet under there. You know, you can't just wear just anything. If you're shopping for base layers, they need to have the word breathable in there. They have to be designed and be breathable garments so they can let your moisture, your sweat, let the heat out. And then he had 4 light layers, including a light windbreaker. So it's not the number of layers that make you warm and comfortable. It's actually what the garments are made out of. So he was wearing the wrong thing. So even though he had many layers, he was still not very comfortable. So when it was cold, he was very cold. And once it warmed up, he got very hot because it wasn't breathing. It would be like a hot box in there, like wearing plastic almost. So you need to wear things that breathe. I'm sure I had the same experience. I got some long sleeve shirts, they're not for cycling. I would not wear them as base layers because if I wear them in the house, I can tell they're not very breathable. So you can't, not everything's designed for you to work out in. You have to get things for exercise that will whip the moisture away from your body. So when we ride, somebody put a comment on one of our videos here, one of the rides, he said that he packs an extra base layer and compresses it and puts it in his pocket and takes it so he can change when he gets wet. Well, my reply was, why don't you just get a breathable base layer so you don't have to carry extra? We don't carry extra. We don't get wet. Even when it rains, we wear a jacket that breathes. So if you wear the right stuff, you don't have hassles with worrying about, oh, I'm wet under there or whatever, because when you get sweat baked in, you get cold. It's not comfortable when it's cold, and you're sweaty when it warms up. So it just doesn't work. You end up taking off stuff and you're always messing around. So no, you wear the right stuff. We wore 2 layers, 2 Celsius, 2 layers. It went from 2 Celsius to 22 last week. Just our team kit and the long sleeve base layer, merino wool, thermal, I call it thermal base layer. That's all. But it breathes well enough to where even in the 70s, it's fairly comfortable. You know, so no, you got to get the right stuff. Put a little bit of time shopping for the right stuff and get what's designed. So Leonard wants to know if one can train with weights to improve overall fitness for speed and power, or in turn to lose weight as well. I don't train with weights because I get bulky and I don't want to build any muscles that I don't need on the bike. So that's the only thing with training with weights. Yeah, you can train with weights. You'll build strength, but you'll also build some extra muscles that may cause you to get dropped when the road goes up, because your watts per kilo matters. So you need to do it carefully. It depends on your body type. My body type, I get real bulky, so I don't do weights. I do calisthenics. I stretch a lot in my recovery, which is not about building strength. It's more for flexibility. Because a lot of times when you do a lot of climbing, if you're not flexible, your lower back can ache because you use those muscles when you're climbing, when you're putting down power, the muscles in the back, your glutes, your hamstrings, and so forth. So you can get like a little aching in your lower back. And so I make sure that I keep my stomach muscles strong to counteract that. That's the kind of stuff I spend my time on. So yeah, weights are good. There are a lot of sprinters that train with weights, especially the guys that do track stuff. And I'm sure a lot of the road sprinters train with weights, but you see what happens in the tours. As soon as the road goes up, a lot of them get dropped. There are a few guys like Sagan and some of the other guys who climb fairly well, and so they can hang within reason. But yeah, so you got to be real careful about what kind of muscles you build. So I do my weight training on the bike. We called it a muscular endurance training. H. Bell, can you explain the difference in power and strength in cycling? Well, it depends on what you're referencing. Power in terms of revs. That's how we refer to it. You know, when you do a high velocity spin, if you have a power meter, you will see the power meter spike up. Strength is holding speed, getting it up there and holding it. That's strength. Going up a climb and holding the watts. That's strength. You know, but power, I really equate the velocity, ability to close gaps and open gaps. That takes speed. That's pure, you know, just putting down the power. You're not going to do that for very long, but sometimes that's the difference between getting dropped and staying with the bunch. You know, and strength is something that you can hold forever. You pretty much, you know, you get on there, you get it up to speed, and you sit at that speed and just motor. You know, whereas power is, I'm gonna break from this group. You've ever been in a situation where the guys are right there, but you can't quite close it? You're lacking a bit of power, because if you have the power, you're already strong enough to be there. You basically would downshift and accelerate and get there. So revs, think about revs in terms when you talk about power. Jason says, moisture wicking base layer with insulated long sleeve jersey and tights in 40 to 45. Awesome for me, just a slight chill, but did not overheat. Yeah, that's what it takes. It's not so much for me. Everybody's different, so it's good that you're mentioning for you, because everybody's different. I personally will not wear a long sleeve base layer in anything other than temperatures of 40 Fahrenheit, which is about, let's see, 4 Celsius or something like that. 40 Fahrenheit or lower, I'll wear long sleeve. Higher than that, I just wear a regular base layer, because I tend to run hotter. I generate more heat. And it has everything I wear under my jerseys must be moisture wicking, because otherwise, what's the point? I'm working out. That's what I need. So I don't have any base layers that aren't. And I don't know why you'd want to buy a base layer that they don't specifically state wicks moisture. And just because it's stated, you're still going to have to figure out, is this brand really representing correctly? Because some people can misrepresent. And so once you find the brand that have the quality you need, even if you have to wait till the sales are there or whatever, get what you need, get a few copies, and you should be good, because they last a long time. I don't wear base layers in the summer. There's no reason for it. It's too hot. I just wear my jersey. But winter, you need them. And, you know, spring also, if it's 55 Fahrenheit or, you know, up to like 65, I just wear base layers most of the winter through the spring. It's just easy to put on a regular jersey, and you're comfortable through a long range of temperatures. There are some rides where I will wear arm warmers where I don't need anything on my legs, because your arms aren't doing any work, so they get chilled. And then I make sure my fingers don't get too cold. So I have gloves that you can wear in mild temperatures that are lightweight. But you do need to double up and use liners when it gets very cold, because I hate my fingers being cold. It's not a whole lot of fun. It just reduces the amount of time you can be out there riding. You know. So, all right. So we're going to wrap up, guys. I just wanted to have a short session here. We're a little over an hour to get you all ready for the weekend. John Hill, appreciate you helping the channel out. It means a lot. Cycle Warrior, our other channel members. Robert Tangler, we appreciate your support. Without you, we won't be able to do this. I really appreciate that. I just want to make sure that all of you are safe and that you get out there tomorrow, get your Ks in, however you're going to do it. Do it on the trainer. It doesn't matter. Keep your body active. If you can't ride, don't fuss over it. It's not a big deal. If something interferes that you have to do, you'll just do it the next time or do it later. If you don't have a trainer, get a trainer, because this time of year, days are short, weather's crappy, this part of the world. Just don't let that stop you from working out, so you can get on the trainer. So I'll talk to you all later. Thanks for tuning in.